Hey guys, I'm Ben and welcome to another episode of Underground Reviews. Today we are going to look at something that is about as far from the underground as it gets, and that's the new release, so released this year, however the 2018 James Guthrie full remix of Pink Floyd's 1977 masterpiece, Animals. I was only a small child when I first heard Pink Floyd coming out of my mum's record player. She had an original pressing of Dark Side of the Moon, and I remember as a kid being transfixed by that album. As if it was some kind of magic, transporting me to an alternative reality or something, sending me careening through the bonds of space and time itself. Pink Floyd are probably my first favorite band too, and when I was old enough to buy my own albums, I discovered the rest of their holy tetralogy with Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall. All perfect albums to my ears and some of the greatest music ever committed to tape. I came to Animals last of the four when I was already deep into metal and rock as a teenager, and I remember being struck by its darkness and intensity. Of course, some of that darkness is on display in The Wall, but it's already more refined and focused there. Like Roger Waters' hate and anger had needed distilling over those years or something. On Animals, like the title, it felt more raw and animalistic. More oppressive at times too. As always, the tension between the darkness of Waters and the grand power and beauty of David Gilmour and Richard Wright's musical expression led to the best music the band ever made, and on Animals it's very much present too. For example, the bleak and cutthroat subject matter of Dogs combined with the heavenly harmonized guitar lines that take the song out of the murk and into the stratosphere. It's absolutely glorious stuff, and coincidentally has always been one of my all-time favorite Pink Floyd songs. The music on Animals has always had a menacing feel to it, and while I've never had any criticism of the original mix, in fact I always thought it sounded pretty good, as do all their albums from the tetralogy, hearing this new James Guthrie mix of the album has made me realize how much of the foreboding feeling was due to the mix. When I first heard this 2018 remix, and before I even paid attention to which instruments and sections of music were prominent or whatever, the first thing I noticed was the vibe it gave me straight away. With its brightness, it immediately felt like more of a continuation of Wish You Were Here with its brighter and clearer sound. Which, after feeling the album was dark and murky sort of for decades, it was kind of a shock at first, but actually a fairly pleasant one. From the moment you hear Roger's voice on Pigs on the Wing, you can already feel the difference. His voice is clearer and sitting in a different place in the mix. The mood of the music itself remains, but it almost feels like a different take or as if it was recorded in a different studio. Then we get to Dogs, and this is where things get interesting. With the cleaner, brighter sound on the individual instrument takes, everything cuts through the mix more, and things which perhaps felt less obvious or even non-existent before suddenly play a major role. Gilmour's rhythm guitars, for example, really cut through, and when he's hitting his leads, they're more bluesy and soulful sounding and less harsh than they originally were. When those classic harmony lines kick in, it's always been glorious, but here it lifts it ever so slightly higher, which is awesome. On Pigs, one of the real standouts that I noticed was the bass line. Of course, famously played by Gilmour himself on this track, is boosted in the mix, and it sounds so much more present and alive and gives the song even more groove. When I hear this version of the song, the bass has really become the star of the show for me, where it really wasn't before. Another interesting feature is how Richard Wright's keyboards and organs are placed throughout the album, at times making it feel almost like a new section. I'm constantly hearing little sounds and lines here and there that are familiar, but that I'd never really paid attention to before, so that's also really cool. Nick Mason's drum sounds are also a touch brighter and warmer, but overall, I haven't really noticed anything major on that front, but the drums do sound great on the whole. All three vocalists sound fantastic too, and the clearer, brighter, boosted sound is another aspect that lifts the album out of its more previously sort of murky condition. Again, on the rocker Sheep, when the band kicks into those explosive guitar riffs, it just sounds fantastic. Very vibrant and clear, and exciting to hear it in this form. Also, the phaser effect on the bass has been dialed up on the intro, and the drums have a much sharper sound there too. Almost too sharp maybe on that part. However, the organ sounds much more alive and present and exciting. It's in some of the more subdued parts of the album that things are more noticeably different, where things pop out and show themselves where previously they were more hidden. Even the spoken word part in Sheep feels more clear and understandable. And those last 2 minutes or so when those, pure guitar rock city riffs kick in, it's just glorious stuff. The guitar sounds so electric and the organ is full and supports it perfectly in the mix. Of course, nothing has changed with the music itself. It's the same songs from the same sessions that we've all known and loved for decades. However, there is certainly a newness that exudes from this version of the album. It feels like it could have been recorded yesterday while retaining the power of those songs and that era. It's hard to say which I prefer at this point, the original or this new mix, because I'm so familiar with and attached to that original darkness of the original mix, the density of it. However, I have to say I find the cleaner, clearer, and brighter new mix to be extremely enjoyable too. And objectively, I think I might even enjoy it even more. It's like a new life has been breathed into this masterpiece, and I'm getting to almost hear it anew. Where I felt I'd explored every nook and cranny of it, I now get to see it in a whole new light. I feel like the curtain has been pulled back to some degree, and instead of exposing the back of house, we simply get exposed to even more splendor of the play itself. The question many of you may be asking, though, is that since there are no additional extras, no live stuff or outtakes or unreleased material from the session, stuff like that, is it worth it? Well, I think absolutely yes. It's like having your classic car that's been sitting in the garage for years, rebuilt from scratch with new original parts, and getting it back as the same car but looking and performing better than ever. Personally, it's reignited my love for animals, and for that alone, it's worth it. Anyway, it's customary to rate all the albums on this show, but it was always a perfect album for me, and this mix makes it even more perfect, so I'm giving it an obvious score of 10 out of 10. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Stay metal, and see you next time.